Hey everyone, what's going on? Thanks for tuning back into Relevant Jukebox, and welcome back to another episode of The Gauntlet, and this is going to be for August 2020, where I go over a bunch of records that I didn't touch upon in a full-length review, but I still wanted to mention to you guys and still throw out some quick thoughts and suggestions out there. So, without further ado, let's get into these reviews. So, newest full-length album from Amine, Limbo over here was, at least better than his last album, but, I'm not really too huge on Amine overall. I mean, he just kind of brings to the table this very agreeable pop rap blend that is just kind of not for me. He does have some witty lines woven in there, and the track on this record with Young Thug, Compensating, I believe it was called, was actually a pretty catchy track. I did like that one. So I guess, if you're looking for some new Amine, give this a listen. So newest EP over here from Tkay Maidza is actually probably my pick for EP of the year so far in 2020. It's just a collection of bunch of colorful bangers that are really catchy and actually pretty aggressive at times as well. I heard the single Awake that features JPEG Mafia late last year when she dropped that, and that does land on this EP again over here, and it sticks out overall. It is the most aggressive cut. It also sticks out in its tone, but I think she can sing and she can rap, so I mean, this EP was pretty great. I'm just looking forward to a full-length album of some sorts coming down the line. Hudson Mohawk has finally dropped a new full-length album over here, Poom Gems, which is actually a really colorful collection of eccentric bangers like you would expect from Hudson Mohawk fame. He also did drop another collection of tracks, BBHE, which is a collection of rarities, B-sides, and unreleased material that, again, does have some really nice hidden gems woven in there. So, this did come out through Warp Records, so if you've been a fan of any of their material, I definitely think you should give this a listen. There are some really fun tracks. So, Immersion is the latest full-length album from the sludge metal band Primitive Man, and this record is sludgy and heavy as hell, as you might expect if you've listened to Primitive Man before. I mean, I do admire how heavy the tones on this record and this band can sound at times, but this album overall is just very one note in my opinion. I mean, the progressions that these tracks take are just not interesting in the least bit. It's just kind of like one sludgy beatdown section after another with, the singer just doing his guttural vocal screams, and it just kind of comes off stale. Newest full-length album from Boldy James. This is the Versace Tapes, and this is another release that was dropped through Griselda Records. So if you are familiar with that record label, you kind of know what you're getting yourself in for as far as East Coast gritty hardcore hip-hop goes. But this record over here is a lot more low-key actually than some of the other stuff through Griselda, and it actually parallels a lot of what Ka does, in my opinion at least. Boldy's flows are just very subdued and low-key overall, again, like the beats on this project are, but, nothing on this record pops as much as what's on a Ka release. The hooks are not as sharp, so going through this entire project, it just kind of became very forgettable overall. But, if you are interested in hip-hop in this style, I would say give this album a listen. So Year of the Knife is a hardcore band that I've been hearing on the internet being talked about and buzzed about, for a little while now, and this is their debut album finally over here. And, overall, I mean, for me, this album just kind of sits in limbo as far as hardcore music goes. I mean, there aren't really any unique qualities about this release overall. It is very fierce sounding, which is nice, and it does sport a very nice recording. It's pretty heavy, and there are a couple breakdowns across this LP's runtime that are kind of cool, but overall, this whole release to me just came off very monotonous, and I ended up just getting kind of lost in the very boring chord progressions and the faster pacing that it has. The legendary rapper Nas has a new record out over here called King's Disease, and overall, I mean, it's just okay, but extremely boring. Album from Nas, like most of his discography, honestly. So, I mean, that's really all that there is to say about this album. So, Bright Eyes are back. They have a new record out called Down in the Weeds over here. And, I don't know. I guess I kind of just missed the Bright Eyes train overall as it was full steam ahead when they were making music back in the early 2000s. I just cannot hear at all what everybody else seems to freak out about Bright Eyes. And, this new record overall is just okay. It's very grandiose in its presentation and a lot of the instrumentation on here. It actually kind of reminds me a lot of like early Arcade Fire. But I mean, I don't know, I'm just not really a huge fan of Conor Oberst's voice. It's very dramatic sounding to my ears, and these songs just, I don't know, don't have any like standout qualities to them. They just kind of like go by, and I can't really recall much about this album. So No Joy, this is a shoegaze band that I haven't heard from in a little while now, and I do prefer the band's earlier material when they were pulling more from the worlds of like Sonic Youth and other early like 90s shoegaze acts. But this new album, Motherhood, over here is just a head scratcher overall for me. I mean, there is a lot more focus on percussion elements throughout the record here, with some synthetic instrumentation layered in with a lot of synthesizers. But I mean, what's lost on this whole album is the guitars. Surprisingly enough, for a shoegaze album, I think they sound terrible. And there is some strange mixing on this release, but it doesn't really come off cool. It just kind of sounds like a mess. So Disclosure is back with a new album after a little bit of a gap between their last release, and you know, it's just okay overall. I mean, the opening track to this record, though, that features Kellis, is unbelievable. It's super catchy, extremely infectious, but it ends up being the best track on the whole album and sets such a high expectation right out of the gate. I mean, the rest of the release just cannot catch up to that expectation, unfortunately. So The Other Side is another new EP over here from the New York dance producer MoMa Reddy, who's had a pretty prolific 2020 so far. And this new EP from him overall is another really good one. It is right in his wheelhouse, a lot of infectious breakbeats across this entire runtime. And the last track on this EP, If I'm in Love, is a huge standout. Probably my favorite MoMa track so far that I've heard from him. One of my favorites as well in 2020. Really, really infectious vocal sample in that track that I just can't get enough of. And rounding out this batch of records for the month of August, there is a new EP out from the electronic producer Shlohmo titled Heaven Inc. And, you know, it's okay. It's a little bit more low-key for Shlohmo's sake. I wouldn't say it necessarily blew me away, but I did get a lot of enjoyment out of it. I connected with some of the melodies across some of these tracks over here, even though they're set to a sort of gray and lo-fi landscape. But again, I don't know, just thought it was enjoyable, and I do think it's worth a listen if you're interested in electronic music. And that's going to do it for a bunch of records in the month of August that I wanted to update you guys on. A lot of kind of like mediocre releases overall for August. The year's starting to kind of like hit this kind of weird stale point, but you know, it looks like there's going to be a lot of cool releases coming out in the rest of the year. And yeah, there wasn't a record I wanted to update you guys on in particularly this month. There wasn't really anything older that like struck a chord in me super heavy that I wanted to mention, but who knows, maybe next month. And yeah, that's going to do it. So let me know in the comments below what you guys have been listening to, if there's anything else that I missed. And as always, thank you so much for watching. Make sure to like and share. And if you want more content from me, hit that subscribe button. Peace.